After his wife Rose passed away, Uncle Peter became a man living inside silence. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining me today. Your time and support mean more than words, and I'm truly grateful to have you here. So let's start. Peter was 68 years old and had spent most of his life in a small town in Ohio, USA. He and Rose had no children, but they had a life full of routines, love, and shared dreams. Every morning, Rose used to wake him up with a soft smile and a cup of warm coffee. Every night, she sat beside him, listening to the ticking clocks he repaired for a living. But now, Rose was gone. 2 months had passed since her death, yet Peter still spoke to her photograph every night as if she were listening. The house felt too big, too quiet, and too empty. The ticking of clocks that once brought him comfort now reminded him of time slipping away. Still, Peter forced himself to live. Every morning he woke up early, ironed his old brown jacket, combed his gray hair, and prepared himself to go to his small watchmaker shop downtown. It was the same shop he had owned for over 40 years. The shop smelled of metal, oil, and time itself. Clocks hung on the walls, watches rested in glass cases, and a small radio played soft classical music. Peter worked every day, not because he needed money, but because work gave his life a rhythm again. After closing the shop each evening, he walked home alone. The streets were familiar, but they felt different without Rose waiting for him. The first time he saw the boy. One evening, as Peter was walking home, he noticed something unusual. On a narrow side street, near a trash basket, sat a small boy. The child looked no older than 10. He was thin, dirty, and quietly eating a half-eaten bun he probably found somewhere. Peter stopped walking. He didn't want to scare the boy, so he stood at a distance, watching silently. The child ate slowly, as if trying to make the bread last longer. When he finished, he wiped his hands on his torn shirt and stayed seated, staring at the ground. Peter felt a tight pain in his chest. But he said nothing. He continued walking home, pretending he hadn't seen the boy. That night, Peter couldn't sleep. Rose's photo stared back at him from the bedside table, and for the first time, he whispered, "Rose, did I do the right thing?" The second day, in the rain. The next evening, the sky was dark and rain poured heavily over the city. As Peter walked the same route, his eyes searched the side street without him realizing it. And there the boy was again. This time, the child was sitting beside the trash basket, completely soaked. Rain ran down his hair and face, and his small body trembled from the cold. Peter couldn't walk past him. He stepped closer and gently called out, "Hey, kid, come here." The child looked up, startled, unsure whether to run or stay. "It's okay," Peter said softly. "I won't hurt you." The child slowly stood up and approached him. "What's your name?" Peter asked. "Harry," Harry replied quietly. Peter reached into his pocket and pulled out $5. "Go buy yourself something warm to eat." Harry's eyes widened. He took the money as if it might disappear. "Thank you, sir," Harry said with a smile that broke Peter's heart. The boy ran off happily into the rain. Peter returned home that night feeling strange, lighter, yet confused. The truth comes out. The next day, Peter saw Harry again. This time, Peter sat beside him and asked, "Why do you sit here every day?" Harry hesitated, then spoke. "My mom and dad died in a car accident," he said simply. "I don't have anyone now. I beg for food and sometimes I collect trash to survive." Peter felt the world stop. That night, Peter didn't just walk past the boy. He brought Harry home. A new beginning. At home, Peter cooked a warm meal. Harry ate like he hadn't eaten properly in years. Peter watched silently, remembering how Rose used to cook. "You can stay here," Peter said finally, "just for now." From that day on, Peter's routine changed. Every morning,
Harry went with him to the watch shop. Peter taught him how clocks worked, how patience mattered, and how time could be fixed, but people needed love to heal. Harry listened with curiosity, laughter slowly returning to the old shop. The question about Rose. One night, Harry asked, "Uncle Peter, who is Rose?" Peter froze. He looked at Rose's photograph and spoke with tears in his eyes. "Rose was my world," he said. "She still is, and she always will be." Harry quietly held Peter's hand, and for the first time since Rose's death, Peter did not feel alone. Sometimes, when life takes someone away, it sends someone else, not to replace the loss, but to teach us how to live again. Winter arrived quietly in the small town of Ohio. Snow covered the streets like a white blanket, softening the sharp edges of the world. Uncle Peter always loved winter when Rose was alive. She used to stand by the window, watching the snow fall, saying it made the world look forgiven. Now, winter felt different. But this year, the house was no longer completely silent. Harry had been living with Peter for several weeks. Slowly, the boy's laughter began to fill spaces that grief had once claimed. He talked too much, asked endless questions, and followed Peter everywhere like a shadow. But Peter didn't mind. In fact, he welcomed it. Every morning, Harry woke up early, just like Rose once did. He helped Peter set the table, sometimes clumsily spilling milk or dropping spoons, then apologizing with wide, guilty eyes. Peter would smile and say, "It's all right, nothing important is broken." And for the first time in a long while, Peter believed his own words. At the watch shop, Harry had become a familiar sight. Customers smiled when they saw him sitting quietly on a stool, watching Peter with deep focus. Peter taught him how to clean watches, how to place tiny gears carefully, and most importantly, patience mattered more than speed. "Time isn't something you chase, it's something you respect," Peter told him one day. Harry nodded seriously, as if those words were the most important lesson of his life. The night of the question. That night, the snow fell harder than usual. The house was warm, the heater humming softly. Harry sat on the floor drawing pictures with old crayons Peter had found in a drawer. Most of the drawings were simple: houses, clocks, stick figures holding hands. Peter sat in his chair, holding Rose's photograph, doing what he had done every night since her death. He spoke to her quietly, telling her about his day, about the shop, about Harry. Harry looked up. "Uncle Peter," he said gently, "you talk to her every night." Peter froze. Harry stood up slowly and walked closer. "Who is she?" he asked. "Who is Rose?" Peter felt his throat tighten. For a moment he couldn't breathe. He looked at the photograph, Rose smiling, alive in a way that time could never touch. "She was my wife," Peter said softly. "She was my world." Harry sat beside him, listening. "Rose was kind," Peter continued, "kinder than anyone you'll ever meet. When she laughed, the whole room felt lighter." Peter swallowed hard. "She used to say our home should always be a place where someone could feel safe." Harry thought for a moment. "Like me?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Peter whispered. "Exactly like you." Harry reached out and held Peter's hand. His hand was small, warm, and steady. "She would like you," Harry said. "I think she sent me to you." Peter's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since Rose's death, Peter did not feel alone. A visit to the past. A few days later, Peter did something he hadn't done in months. He took Harry to the cemetery. Snow crunched beneath their feet as they walked between rows of quiet stones. Peter stopped in front of Rose's grave. He stood there silently for a long time. "This is Rose," he said finally. Harry knelt down and placed a small drawing beside the headstone. It showed a man, a woman, and a boy holding hands under a sky full of clocks. "I made it for her," Harry said. Peter's chest ached, but not in pain. It was something warmer. "Thank you," Peter whispered. That night, Peter slept peacefully for the first time since Rose passed. Becoming family. Weeks turned into months. Peter contacted social services, determined to do things the right way. The process was slow, filled with paperwork and interviews, but Peter never gave up. "I won't let him go back to the streets," Peter said firmly. "He belongs here." Harry attended school. He learned to read better, made friends, and came home every day excited to tell Peter what he had learned. Sometimes Peter didn't understand